Right, good afternoon, YouTube. Thank you for joining us as ever. If you haven't already done so, please click the subscribe button. That way you'll be notified whenever we go live in future. So what have we got today? So it's Tuesday, 16th of August. August being the big one of this. It's not been the most eventful week. This is widely regarded as the quietest week of the whole year. We didn't get much out at the start of the week in terms of data, little bits and snippets out today. Some of them have actually been all right, which we'll go through in a minute. A bit better on Wednesday, but then Thursday, Friday, again, we're really light on big news this week. So yeah, this tends to be about as quiet as the markets can get over the summer. So not many traders at their desks, and as a result, less volume and less kind of news to do it. With less volume, however, can come greater volatility, because if someone does want to get something done in size, then they're more likely to move the market more aggressively than they would do if they were doing that in a slightly more liquid market where there might be more participants kind of taking the other side of that move. So often you can see some real volatility in markets at this time, but when there isn't that sort of action, it can be like watching paint dry. So do kind of prepare yourself for that at times. However, it's not all boring. Tomorrow is a big day, which we'll come on to talk about. But let's have a little run through of what we saw so far on the data front today. So the big ones we were talking about in this morning's Zoom, 10 a.m., the ZEW data out of Germany. This was already, well, this was forecast to be slightly better than the worst number we've seen for a hell of a long time. The number the last month was worse than the COVID lows. So to put that in some sort of context for you, we were already in a worse position than we were a month ago than we were during COVID, and we managed to excel ourselves some more. It came in at a negative 55.3 versus 52.7. And let me bring you up the DAX charts to illustrate how the moves have been, because often we've been saying a lot that the indices haven't been responding as well maybe as the currencies have, but this was the 10 a.m. print on the DAX, and it's been pretty consistent selling. We had a little kind of initial sell-off, a bit of consolidation, but you can quite clearly see the sellers were coming back into play here, and we drilled down through those value lows. We're kind of just trading around there, a bit of volume traders at these levels, so we've found a little bit of a cushion here. I think with the volume, if you get these areas of thin volume, you can quite quickly run through them to the other levels. So if we do manage to get a bullish impulse today, this might be an area to take a look at. Failing that, I mean, the sell, well, it's more prominent in the Dow really, so let me kind of talk about that as we move forward through the rest of the data. If I look at the euro in context at 10 o'clock, we'd already seen quite a lot of weakness out of the euro prior to this, and at 10 o'clock, the low here just didn't really see much follow through on that ZEW. So on this occasion, the indices have been slightly better to have traded, maybe a little bit of life coming back into them. Who knows? But yeah, some decent moves on the DAX there. Then at a 1:30, we had the Canadian CPI data, along with some housing data out of the US. The housing data was pretty mixed. That was decent on the building permits, but slightly worse than forecast on the housing starts, even though we did have an upward revision on the housing starts, which kind of negated a little bit of that downward pressure, but still net it was a slightly weaker number on housing starts. But yeah, the big one really was Canadian dollar CPI, and yeah, we see the just coming in line. So for me, this is no trade, and if you have a look at the price action, it's not exactly sluggish though. Sometimes when markets do come in line, you can see some real moves, and we did see an initial big move on that number at 1:30. Having said that, we haven't broken through the low, so you might have even got filled down here if you weren't too quick off the mark. And yeah, we've kind of consolidated at slightly lower prices than we were accepting earlier in the day. So yeah, just trading below value lows. It's kind of seeing an accepting price down here so far. So let's see what happens with that this afternoon. But to be honest, the data isn't really that significant a miss or a beat. So yeah, with that in mind, is there really enough? You know, there's normally more volatility when you get big data results out, but if the market comes in line as anticipated, you're not really giving yourself much of an edge on which direction it may go in. So for me, I will be steering clear of the CAD pairs today unless something really jumps out at me. Other news, we had the Walmart, which represent about 2.7% of the Dow. They reported their earnings, and they've had an upward surprise, 10% better than forecast. Their actual earnings per share was 177, and the revenues were up a little bit as well, which was much better and with some positive forward guidance. To boot, this was received pretty well by the markets. Taking a look, first of all, at Walmart itself, You can see these on the extended trading hours. Obviously, we're not trading live yet until 2:30, but we have a pop from where we were trading around 132, 133. Within that first 5-10 minutes, we're trading now north of 137 into the 138 handle. So a decent move on Walmart. However, not all of you are able to trade pre-markets on this, but there are ways of getting exposure. And if we look at this 12 o'clock when the data was released, have a look at the Dow at midday today, we did have a nice little pop, albeit, where are we? Here, this is the kind of high volume that you can see coming through. And we saw, albeit not a huge amount, but we saw a rally on those first 10 minutes of about 60 ticks on the Dow. So an initial bit of buying that was kind of faded, and we're back to where we were as we were prior to that Walmart number. So yeah, some opportunities to trade data. We do have target out tomorrow, but unfortunately it's not a big component of the S&Ps. So I wouldn't be expecting quite as much of this even, and this is probably about as little as you would hope to get out of a trade like that. But we do have target out tomorrow, another big retailer in the US. So we'll be interested to see how the rest of the market digests that, because if they're both performing better than forecast, then yeah, perhaps they didn't need to give us these pricing warnings that they were giving us earlier in the year with their low margins. So things are obviously on the mend in that part of the economy. Later on today, again, low on data, and let's fast forward to tomorrow. I've been teeing this up all week, to be honest. This is always going to be the big day. Wednesday this week, Kiwi bank rate, 3 a.m. I won't be here for it, but I will be saving myself for the 7 a.m. CPI reading in the UK. It's going to be a long day tomorrow, so that's why I'm not going to be setting any alarms for 3 a.m. I know Neil will probably be up trading this with gusto and then straight back to sleep at 3:05, but that doesn't work for me. I'll be looking at my first trade of the day. Won't be before we get that number on the CPI in the UK at 7 a.m. And we've got retail sales. Now, retail sales, is this a kind of good news, is bad news sort of situation? Is the retail market in the US is still strong? Does that permit the Fed to, or require even the Fed to raise rates more aggressively than they would previously? That's something we'll be watching, and we'll keep an eye on the Fed's funding rate around that. But that's certainly been the case a couple of times with data recently. We have had some stronger data. The indices haven't liked it too much. Often it's easier to trade the currency with this because it does work the same way twice. So rather than kind of concerning yourself with, is it good news is bad news or good news is good news, maybe just take a look at the currencies to be a little bit simpler to move on. And then following on from that, not to be overdone by the retail sales or CPIs or rates, we have the minutes from the last Fed meeting. Yeah, that's the way we get the real meat on the bone of what was discussed last time out. Not been a huge market mover the last couple of times, but there have been occasions when the minutes of the meeting can really dominate the market. I think really, in honesty, the CPI data that's coming out of the US is probably a bigger tell on what they'll do next rather than the minutes themselves, because I don't think they know their own path. So for them to have written down their views on where they're going to put rates the next meeting 3 weeks ago and get it right would be quite the bit of forecasting from them, given that they themselves don't know what they want to do. They want to see the data come through and react to it. So that is something that we will wait and see as we get more inflation data before the Fed have their next meeting in, I think, about 5 weeks' time. Slightly longer than normal because it is summer, so they get that extra 2 weeks to do very little. So we'll be back in 5 weeks' time for the real Fed decision. Yeah, in terms of news, we've had, I know I mentioned this morning, Michael Burry of the Big Short fame. He has sold all of his stocks. I know we've had some big sales from the likes of Elon Musk and the MD of BlackRock, one of the biggest asset management firms in the country, in the world, should I say. The fact that all these big dogs with pretty good resources and excellent advice are taking money out of markets en masse, perhaps that's telling you this market rally is running out of steam a little bit. Yeah, we had Iran nuclear deals getting closer, so that's taking a little bit of the risk premium away. I think I'm going to run out of time with you for more news prior to the open. Now we've got 30 seconds. Yeah, Biden's going to sign the health and climate bill on Thursday this week. Finally going to get that through. And the move that we had in oil yesterday, I know a lot of you were kind of paying close attention to the oil market yesterday, that 5% sell-off due to that Aramco increased production. Well, we managed to see a nice little fade on that when the market opened at 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock, that was pretty much the low for the remainder of the day, and we had a nice couple of bucks rally to the upside. It's been a little bit trickier today on the open, but yeah, so far the 2 o'clock open has been the high of the day, so perhaps we'll see the opposite trade on that today. But that should give us a nice little run into the open. Yeah, here we go. Second to go. S&P top left, Nasdaq top right. We've got the Dow bottom left, and the 10-year yield on the right-hand side. See if I can tell if we get some big spikes. We had that initial move on the housing data, and it's since given it back. So it will be interesting to see what happens here. But we're seeing the Nas look lower while the Dow looks up. Often you see these correlations that don't work so well in the first 2 or 3 minutes do start to come back into line later on in the day. Often the Nasdaq is often the leader, or has been, with the FANGs being such an important part of the US stock market. I always say that probably 4 out of 5 times. You probably say the Nasdaq is giving you the tell, but it doesn't work every time. So just trade carefully today, I think, is the way to do it. I did want to talk to you about the Dow itself, and this is true across the assets in. Bear with me here. The US indices. Yeah, we have a look at that move up yesterday, and there's a lot of imbalance here. There's a lot of very little in the way of trading was done at these sort of levels this week. And yeah, if we do manage to kind of break down the lows of today on the S&P, it wouldn't be a surprise for it to quite quickly move down towards those value lows at around that 4268 level, where we have other areas of high volume. The reason we're so keen on volume, this is especially true during the summer, is that if you're a big trader and you want to get size in or out, you're more than likely going to try and do it around areas of high volume, because you can more easily hide your trades when there's a lot more trades going on. So a lot more people are buying and selling around these levels, and that's why we had the volume at this price, because we'd had those moves higher and it'd be sold back into, moves lower, bought back into, as you can see with all this price action yesterday and through this morning. So this kind of is an area where if you are looking to get size on or off, you can do it quite aggressively and get it done. Whereas if you're trying to do that in this region, you're not going to get too much joy. People are going to see what you're doing, and probably a bigger fish will come along and eat you up. So then if we do get this breakdown, that's why you probably won't see too much action until we get down here. And often these moves can be quite aggressive. That's one I will be looking for if we do get a breakdown of this pre-market low on the S&Ps at around 4280s. But it looks pretty positive so far on the S&Ps. Nasdaq as well has managed to get itself green, and the yields aren't giving us too much of a tell. But yeah, there's the Dow popping quite nicely towards the value high for the week there. Quite a decent move for the relative move for the opens that we've had in the last couple of weeks. Yeah, 100 ticks, not too 110 ticks on the Dow. A lot more than we've seen on Dow in those first couple of minutes for a little while. So there's definitely some life in the indices today, it seems. Yeah, interesting to see where we go from here. But yeah, with very little in the way of data coming out over the next kind of few hours, you might have a little bit more joy trading your technicals on days like this. We shall see how the day progresses. But yeah, with it being August, not much more to tell you. I will leave it with you. Do trade carefully today. Tomorrow is a big one, so save some financial resource and mental capacity to try and take advantage of what should be hopefully the easiest day of the week. Certainly one with plenty of volatility in it. So good luck out there. As I say, if you haven't subscribed already, please do so and click on the link below. And yeah, if you do want to join in on our Zooms every day, then the link should be below this. So yeah, good to speak to you. Take care.